are we today?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Sarah. For anyone who doesn't know, I am one of the team lead dietitians and our lead outreach coordinator. And I'm here with
Anna, and I'm also one of the team lead dietitians here at TLB.
awesome. Yeah, and today we're gonna actually get to know Anna a little bit more. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And Anna, I'm just so excited to get to learn about you as a practitioner and then also you as just a human being.
Totally. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, how did you get started at TLB? What brought you into this work? All of that.
Totally. So I was actually, fun fact, one of TLB's like first employees. And so I kind of met Tina right as she was like looking to expand into more of like a group practice, whereas she had been primarily like practicing alone up until then. I started working at TLB at the same time that I started working at Center for Discovery in Austin. And so I was kind of doing like part-time work for Center for Discovery. For those of you who don't know, it's like an eating disorder treatment facility in Austin. While I was kind of like starting to see clients also in like this like private practice setting. I was really excited to kind of connect with Tina and hear about like the work that she had been doing for years with clients, and it really aligned with my values and how I wanted to work with individuals. So it felt like, yeah, just like a really good fit to kind of start working at TLB while I was also getting a lot of like really formative eating disorder experience in treatment.
Absolutely. And can you talk a little bit about like that philosophy and your philosophy as a dietitian and what you bring into your work with clients?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost in the philosophy is kind of what people will hear about in like the intro calls, right? So weight inclusive care. So basically not making assumptions about a person's health based on the size of their body or, like that kind of thing. And, we use kind of principles of intuitive eating. So, like, really connecting to body, connecting to like the body experience and like what an individual person's needs might be versus kind of what diets have led a person to believe that their needs are or that kind of thing. And all of that said, it's like, first and foremost, what I really appreciate about TLB's kind of approach to working with people and something that I've really kind of made sure to like foster and like tend to in like my own practices is just meeting people where they're at in their relationship with food and like yes, providing education, yes, providing resources, etc. And also recognizing that to provide all of those things doesn't mean that a person will always be able to kind of like enact them immediately. So it's really figuring out how can I meet a person emotionally where they're at, from a financial standpoint where they're at, right? Like all of those different things is what kind of makes me feel excited about like working with individuals and working at TLB.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And at TLB, what types of clients do you enjoy working with or what populations and all of that?
Totally. So I mean, I like working with a wide variety of clients. I tend to end up working with a lot of adults primarily, honestly. So I do have a few teens on my caseload and I do really like working with teenagers, but um, I have kind of like tended towards adults in my caseload. I really enjoy working with individuals who have, kind of diagnosed eating disorders and have maybe like been through the treatment process, right? Like the higher levels of care. So what we would think about as like residential, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, and that kind of thing, and who maybe benefited from those higher levels of care in some ways, but then also kind of like need to do a little bit of like reinforcement work and could maybe go back to those levels of care, but want to see what they can do in like the outpatient setting. So a lot of what we might call kind of like harm reduction type of stuff is the clients that I really like to work with. I also love working with people who maybe never had kind of a formally diagnosed eating disorder, and maybe never like met all criteria, just because the criteria for eating disorders in like the DSM-5 a lot of times is like so specific and not really accessible to a lot of people to be diagnosed with, right? So maybe people who have like cycled in and out of diets a lot and who have maybe a lot of times a lot of like the logical understanding about like food, understand like nutrition principles, etc., and need help kind of like internalizing some of that information or like that kind of thing. That's not to say that I don't love working with people who like don't know as much about nutrition, because I also love like the education piece of all of it. And yeah, I would kind of like summarize it as like harm reduction, helping people kind of like integrate like logical processes that they understand, right? So that I think that that really applies to like the treatment folks, where it's like a lot of times it's like, I know all of these things from treatment. I don't totally believe them yet. So like, how do we kind of like, I'm making this motion a lot because I imagine it as like knowledge from the brain actually like dropping into the body is kind of like how I picture it. So long-winded way of saying like that's the kind of client that I like to work with.
Yeah, no, totally. And how do you support clients in this journey? What does that look like for you? What are just some techniques or things that you utilize to take a client on their relate through their journey of healing their relationship with food, their body, and movement?
Totally. So I a lot of times I do kind of like to build a like educational foundation to all of these principles or like the things that we end up talking about in session, just because if the foundation is good, I think then we can like build out other things really well. And so a lot of like my early sessions with clients might look a lot like education, myth busting, fact checking, kind of like getting an understanding about like what does a person already understand about food and where can I kind of offer supplemental education, right? Like that kind of thing, like more so using the like undergrad kind of like nutrition education knowledge as like my resource for that kind of thing. And then as it kind of relates to integrating that knowledge into either like behavior change or like changing a person's approach to their relationship with food or changing the way that they supporting them and changing the way that they like feel about like their bodies, like whatever that might be. A lot of it is actually more about like an embodied approach to
Mhm.
all of these things. So a lot of times it is kind of integrating like, okay, logically you kind of have these foundations and you know about these things. Emotionally, there might be things that are getting in the way of actually, like I said, right, like believing these things, integrating this knowledge. And so kind of understanding like where do these emotions kind of like come from? I think that's where like the nutrition counseling piece comes in, and why I think it's important to like also be working with a therapist to kind of make sure that we're staying in our scope and that someone else can also be like tending to this, right? But like, what was I gonna say? Like, how do we kind of start understanding like what are these like narratives that were built over like a really long period of time? And so like a dietitian one time being like, actually, like, let me help you fact check this, like won't necessarily kind of demolish those or like unravel those like belief systems, right? And so it's kind of like building what I describe it as is like building a relationship with these belief systems and understanding maybe like ways that they previously served you and how they might have kind of like diminishing returns the more that you grow and kind of like learn about your relationship with food, learn about your relationship with your body, which I also feel really strongly about kind of like talking through like body image themes with people and kind of understanding um, what are narratives that we learned about our bodies before we even really had like the language to have a relationship with our bodies, right? And so I feel like with that comes a lot of, like themes of like body liberation and themes related to like yeah like marginalization and like how do people with like marginalized experiences kind of like relate to their bodies. So all of that kind of like coalesces into what I kind of think about as like nutrition counseling, emphasis on like nutrition at times and emphasis on like counseling at other times.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, your clients experience it firsthand and we get to see in the practice just that deep counseling work and really digging in with clients on where these beliefs and yeah, everything kind of comes from and then being able to explore upward from there.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's
love that work.
awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so I guess, going along with that, are there any kind of like themes within the nutrition or mental health space that like just really light you up when talking about it or providing education and getting to explore that with a client?
Totally. So it's funny, back when I worked in treatment, I ran a group called like Nutrition in the News. So I do really love doing things like, okay, like what does the research say? How is, like the like mainstream media kind of like communicating the research and like where is there maybe like we're playing a little bit of like a game of telephone and where do we kind of like start getting things wrong or kind of like misinterpreting things as we talk about, how nutrition topics are talked about again, just kind of like in like mass culture, I feel really strongly about and like really excited about. Like I said, body image really lights me up. Like I just think it's um the relationship we have with our bodies and like with ourselves is the only relationship we are guaranteed
Yep.
from the beginning of our lives until the end of our lives. And so I love talking about body image as it relates to like a relationship with yourself and like a relationship with your body. I also just really like, yeah, just like I was talking about with like maybe some like embodiment themes, the prospect of kind of like creating an understanding and connection with your body as it relates to like with hunger and fullness, for example, like when I feel this, what does this tell me about like my current experience and kind of like the role that how we experience like emotions in our bodies and how that then ends up impacting kind of hunger fullness themes is something I feel really strongly about. So those are kind of the things that light me up.
Yeah, so cool and such amazing topics to support clients with um yeah, I feel like so often folks might have an idea of what it's like to work with a dietitian and then come in and it's like, wow, I'm like tapping into these concepts and these parts of me that I didn't expect to with a dietitian. I thought you were just going to hand me a meal plan and it's like, no, we are going to do this deep work because food and mental health and our our lived experience is also closely related.
Totally. Yeah. I think a lot of times what I'll tell people is like, if it were just kind of about like a logical understanding of things and like me handing a person a sheet of paper, then like we would probably have, you know, 8 to 10 sessions with the person, and then we'd like, okay, check. But it's like,
Mm.
because there's so much more to our relationships with food, our relationships with our body. It's like, yeah, we do kind of need, not to say that like a person can't get, a good amount out of like 8 to 10 sessions, but it's like, it's not surprising to me when we maybe like need a lot more time to do a little bit more of like the deeper work because it isn't just about like, oh, educate me. And then it's like, and all of this was easy to incorporate, you know?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Amazing. Well, and I feel like that gives us such a great picture of you as a provider, as a dietitian. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you outside of work. What are some
Mm.
hobbies or just things that you enjoy? Yeah, what lights you up outside of nutrition?
Totally. Okay, I used to live in Austin. I'm now living in Houston, so I see people mostly like virtually. And naming that I live in Houston feels important just like in the context of everything because I love hanging out so it's called Buffalo Bayou and it's just like a pretty trail here in Houston. It's like walking distance from my apartment. So I love yeah, just kind of like spending time outdoors when the weather allows it, because as you can imagine, it gets pretty hot and humid here. I really love spending time I have 2 cats now. It's crazy because I got one cat like a year ago and then adopted a second cat less than a year in, which like I never saw for myself, to be honest. But I love hanging out with my cats. A lot of times I'll like kind of be doing, I think I talk about this in like one of my intro things, but like I love doing puzzles with my cats. Well, okay, they're not really helping. They're like loafing, but I love doing puzzles and having my cats around basically. Um, I'm also a really big reader. And so right now I'm actually working my way through Anna Karenina for the first time, which has been really cool. So I like kind of taking on like little like reading projects kind of like throughout the year. Yeah, just kind of been like am a perpetual learner. So I really like all of that. And my partner is in residency in like medical residency here in Houston, which is why I moved here. So, as you can imagine, his time is limited, but like I love spending time with him too, like when we get a chance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Amazing. Very cool. Well, anything else you want to add about you?
Um, no, I kind of think we covered it. Yeah, I just like love working with clients. I love what we do and just feel really lucky and like honored that like people kind of trust us with um these topics that can feel so vulnerable and like so close to heart. So that's kind of all I've got to say about it.
Yep. Yep. Totally. Well, thank you so much, Anna. It was so great to learn a little bit more about you. And hopefully, this gives everyone a little insight into what it would be like to connect with you and work with you. So, yeah,
Right.
thank you everyone for tuning in to Snack Chats with TLB Nutrition Therapy. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Bye.